getting the most out of the system. So the strategy is very simple. It's really only got a couple of indicators that we're using. We are using the moving average envelopes. So these envelopes are that's basically determining whether we get in and out of trades. So obviously the key inputs for the moving average envelope, this is really the driving component to your entry. So now what percentage of your strategy, what's the value you would place on your entry of a system? What value do you place on the entry? If you're going to look at a system and go, right, well, I'm looking at entry, money management, stops, targets, etc., what value am I putting on the entry? About 15-20%. That's about right, isn't it? I mean, there's a trader in the US, Tom Brazzo, who basically his famous line is that, or famous quote or comment is that he really doesn't care where he gets into the market, it's how he manages the trade. So he'll just look at a chart and he can buy or sell, and it comes down to money management, which is pretty much, if you've done any of the testing with the fixed target, no stop, and an initial stop, that's pretty much, if you look at a lot of the strategies that you run on the trend trader, if you just have a fixed target and a fixed stop, you'll find that'll be profitable if you don't have any trailing stop and you just have a 50-50 entry. So entry is really not as important as a lot of us like to think. So, but obviously we need to get an idea here of what's driving our setups. Now, the driving force for our setup, or the speed at which we're getting into trades, is going to be these moving average envelopes. So how fast you make these envelopes, which is the length of the envelope, will determine how quickly you're getting in and out of the trades. And the other thing is how wide you make them will determine how quickly you get in. So you've got speed of moving average envelope. So if I change that to say 20, we should see a dramatic change in the envelopes. As you can see, they're following price more there. And if we go, this allows us now to really be, like with a trend trade is great, but we've got fixed entry points, haven't we? Where the break support, the support and resistance are dynamic, don't get me wrong. They move with price action, but this is a little bit more dynamic in that we're using the envelopes to determine whether we're long, short, etc. But we're also using a couple of other indicators to get us into the trade. So you can see that if I modify my envelopes, that's going to determine my speed that my envelopes are running at. And the percentage above and percentage below, that's going to determine the width or the distance between the upper and lower envelope. So I can make those as small or as large as I want, and that's going to obviously have a huge impact on my entries as well. So you can already see that you're going to have to do a bit more work in working out, right, well, each market's going to have its little nuances, what works really well, what doesn't work well. So it's going to be really important that if you find these little gold nuggets, that you're communicating with other traders. So what I want us to do is I want us to really actively use the boards, because that information that we cycle through to each other, if we have that on the board, we look at it, everyone looks at it, we're sharing ideas, it just creates a much better environment, a much better testing environment, much better trading environment, because we're sharing, the best practice ideas that we're coming up with. So that's what I want us to do. I want us to really, if you've got any ideas or improvements for the strategy, you found a really great setting on soybeans or crude or coffee or whatever it is, definitely share that. And now I mentioned last week 505 share bar on gold works really well. So I'll be putting some more stuff in about that. Just little tips and tricks like that we want to kind of share with each other. So just jumping back to the moving average bands, or envelopes I should say. So you've got and we'll talk about the width here in a minute, but the speed is obviously going to be the determining factor for you getting into the trade. So we've taken that to 20. So what we have to do now is we have to go into our strategy and make sure that why do we need to make sure that our length matches our moving average? Our strategy matches our settings. Why do we have to do that?